Let's catch up with Greg Alexander. Great that you've been available to us 2 weeks in a row, Randy. It's just a fascinating contest, this NRL. It just keeps giving at this stage. And it started way back last Thursday, seems forever ago, that the Rabbitohs said to the Dolphins, right, enough's enough. We've got to address the balance there.
Sure. Good to chat again, mate. You're right. Yeah, South's big winners in the end over the Dolphins. The Dolphins have been plucky in some of their games and come up with some extraordinary results and wins and still sit in the top 8. They're on 8 points and haven't had their bye yet. So pretty impressive by the Dolphins, but just not good enough for South Sydney. Plenty of strike. Cody Walker was very good. Latrell chimed in with a couple of special pieces of play, and the Dolphins in front of 23,000 went down, and Souths get their 4th win of the season, and in the end did it convincingly, Smitty.
How do you read this, both of these sides actually? 22-18, the Sharks beat the Roosters. It's struggling to get a take on both of these two sides early season.
Well, both were looking to respond after the Roosters, and you're right, the Roosters have had a pretty big injury toll. And I know there's plenty of sides that have struggled with injury, but the Roosters in particular, their forward pack has been pulled apart by injury. They had some return through the New South Wales Cup, Angus Crichton, who had some problems to deal with over the off-season leading into the season. Satili Tupanua has played 2 games in the New South Wales Cup now. So they've got some big names returning to the side, but they haven't actually set the world on fire yet. There's been, Tedesco missed a couple of games through head knocks. There's a bit of pressure on their halves. Sam Walker and Luke Keary. Joey Manu's been quiet, or certainly quieter than he usually is. And the Sharks, on the flip side, also coming off the back of that Warriors loss. They beat them at home after leading the Warriors 20-0. So good performance by the Sharks. It was an all-round performance by them. And they did score 3 tries in the second half. The Roosters led at half-time, Smitty, 12-8. Didn't score a point in the second half, and the Sharks finished all over the top of them. Nico Hines, again, very good for Cronulla. But both sides, been a bit hit and miss so far this season. But I expect both to be up there when it gets towards the end of the season.
Just when you think the Storm have found another level and they're going to ease themselves into, a top of the table type situation as they're quite used to being, the Sea Eagles knock them over 18-8. I didn't see that coming, I'll be honest. Yeah, no,
Manly were embarrassed by the Panthers the week before. Penrith led 32-0 at half-time, and Manly never got into the game. And it was a big win by Penrith. Tom Trbojevic did hobble around for most of the game. Took an injury into the game, got a needle for a hip point injury, and ended up affecting his back. So Tommy was a passenger against the Panthers. So you knew that there'd be some sort of response. When a good side like Manly, and they've started the season well, have got enough good players in Cherry Evans, Trbojevic brothers, to be a good side this year. When players like that are challenged, there's normally a response, and they did. They gave it at home. Brookvale Oval, up against the Storm, the Battle of Brookie. Now, we go back a dozen years to when there was an all-in brawl there, and it's been known as the Battle of Brookie since. And even though there was no brawl, Smitty, boy, it was a physical game. There was some big hits. There was players sin-binned. It had everything, the game. And Manly, in the end, too good for the Storm. The Storm had Cameron Munster at fullback because of the Nick Meaney injury, missing the game. So they had Troy Pezzett at 5'8". I think that affected them. But, Manly just too good. And you're right. I thought the Storm, after their wins over the Bunnies and the Roosters, look good things. But Manly had Manly were challenged as a side after their big loss to Penrith and answered it with a good performance.
They did. They really did. Panthers very tight over the night, 16-15.
Well, I didn't work Saturday, which is a rare thing. I'm normally doing something on a Saturday at either a game or in the studio, and I didn't work. So I So I sat at home and watched 3 games of fantastic footy. The Warriors, the Cowboys, into the Newcastle Panthers game. And you're right, Penrith had to work hard. They weren't, the week before everything was fluent. Their timing was perfect. Their execution was great. But not so against Newcastle. And Newcastle really deserve a lot of the credit for putting Penrith off their game. Newcastle scored 3 tries to 2. It was just the goal kicking and the field goal from Nathan Cleary, which was pretty special in Golden Point, to ice the game after the first set around the 40-metre mark. Struck it beautifully, but Newcastle really took it to the Panthers, Smitty, and made them work hard for that. For Penrith, it's a good sign when you don't play well, when you're just off your game a bit, and when the other side take it to you, to still be able to win's a very good sign. But Newcastle have been good. They've, over the last month, without Kalen Ponga, I don't think people thought that they would have put up the performances that they have, and travelling well. But it was a cracking game in front of a sellout crowd in Newcastle.
Mm. Great crowd too, as you would expect at Mount Smart for the Warriors and the Cowboys.
Yeah.
A lot of people have had texts and comments this morning about the fact that the Warriors won ugly, but last year they were losing very, very ugly. If that's an ugly win, they'll take it any day of the week, because the Cowboys are more than useful outfit.
Oh, look, that was a great win, and I tipped the Cowboys. I thought, the Cow might be, they're getting a couple of players back. The Warriors have been fantastic, but maybe the Cowboys just surprise everyone, even though they were crossing the ditch to play. And I tipped the Cowboys, but more than happy to see the Warriors win. And after the effort that they put in, boy, that's a Warriors side over the last, I can't remember how many years, would not have won that game. Would not have won the game with the mistakes they made, their ability to defend those mistakes. You've got a side like the Cowboys who have got so many attacking weapons from in the forwards and the back line. For them to have 50 tackles inside the 20 and to restrict them to 14 points and to do enough to win the game was one of the great performances of the year. And I sent Andrew Webster a text message after the game, Smitty, and of course Andrew was at the Panthers for a couple of years, and I said to him, well, Webby, that was heart and mouth stuff, but what a great win. You've built a team that New Zealand can be proud of. Full house to witness a gutsy win. Mount Smart, this fortress, really happy for you. And that's how I felt. I felt, wow, this Warriors side, and I know 7 games doesn't make a season, but they have been the storyline. And on our program this morning, Ian, plenty of chat about the Warriors and what they've been able to do in the opening 7 weeks and the reasons for it. We had a Warriors fan call us from Tokyo this morning to say how happy he was and what an effort that this team have made. But that's how I feel about the Warriors at the moment. He's built something special. Boy, I hope it continues, because that would be the story of the year.
You see, to me, a lot of this is all about Andrew Webster, because sure, they've brought in Richie Agar from Yorkshire, but by and large, the coaching setup hasn't changed that much. There's still that group behind. What is it? I mean, you know this guy. You've seen him in action for Penrith. He's been ultra successful there. We're still trying to get to the bottom of who this Andrew Webster is and how he can make a team who didn't want to play last year want to rush out and play this year so quickly.
Normally there's more than one thing that happens, Smitty. Normally there's a whole, and when you're talking about a team that wins a comp, there's not just one reason. There's a whole lot of reasons why a team is successful during the year. The things that we've sort of got out of the fans and both Cameron Smith we had on air this morning for our hour, which we do every Monday. They've moved home. That's a big point, the fact that they are back home. But there's been plenty of Kiwi Warriors sides that have played out of New Zealand and haven't even looked closely like this team this year. So that's one reason, the fact that they've moved back. The new coach is another reason. The new players is another reason. The fact that they've got New South Wales Cup playing back this year, so they're competing. So they've got a team under them that are playing, that are keeping fit, and so you combine all those things, but you keep coming back to Andrew Webster. You can have all those things. You can be playing at home. You can have some new players in your side, but unless you've got a coach that can get it into your head what is important, what you need to be doing is important in winning games, and they've gone back to the basic things that are important. And I guess Andrew Webster, over his 2 years at Penrith, and probably before that, began to understand what is important in winning football games, and it can be the simplest things in the game. It can be all about effort and Smitty, when we, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in the Origin scene here over the last 5 years, and you realise what becomes important in a game. And my summary of Origin is that it's 85% effort with a bit of brilliance. And that's Origin. 85%, 90% effort, sprinkled with a bit of brilliance. And you've got the players that can be brilliant, but if that effort isn't there, and that's what the Warriors have done differently. And you look at Shaun Johnson's game, and Shaun has always been brilliant. Like, Shaun Johnson is one of the most, I think, best players in terms of can do things that other players can't over the last decade. But what he's done is mix that with good decision-making and effort. Like Shaun Johnson kicking, chasing his own kicks and being the first up there to make the tackle. And if you get that sort of feeling throughout a team, they become very hard to beat. And the Warriors are doing that. So to defend they didn't play the perfect footy on the weekend, but to defend the mistakes they made is the difference between this Warriors team and a Warriors team over the last decade.
No Tamari Martin for quite some time now, it seems, Brandy, but they used Dylan Walker. They tried Dylan Walker at 6. How did you rate that performance going forward in terms of the issue in the 6 jersey?
Well, he certainly played well enough to hold his jersey next week. So, he's a quality player, Dylan Walker, and he's evolved over the years. First started as a centre. Over the last few years, he's been used as a bench player to come on and play in the middle because he's got the ability to pass the ball, and he's got good speed. So he does trouble those big men in the middle. And then, he's also played 5'8" at Manly for a fair bit of time. So he's got the experience, and off the back of his performance against the Cowboys, I don't see any problem with him moving forward. Luke Metcalf is an interesting one, and played well in the trial games, tore a hamstring and tore it well, and he's been over to the States to have it looked at. I don't know when he returns, but over the period that Tamari Martin is out, he'd be a handy man to come back in. But after what Dylan Walker did on the weekend, and knowing that he's played he's got some experience playing in the 6 jersey, I see no reason that he moved from there. Smitty, he was very good.
Right, let's look at the Broncos and what they've got coming up, because my producer, Ricardo, whispered on my ear before that for the rest of the season as such, the Broncos will only be outside of Queensland in terms of their matchups, only 6 weeks out of Queensland. So how advantageous is that for them? And they're playing damn well. They mopped up the Titans.
It seems like they haven't been out of Queensland much already, Smitty. So if that's the case, and I know they do trip around a bit, but I did hear something that the Broncos only play in New South Wales twice this year for some reason, some quirky reason. The draw, and there's been a lot of criticism aimed at the draw, and it is a very, I can imagine, the Canadian computer that does all this, the clubs throw in what they'd like to see in their marquee games. But apart from that, I don't think the clubs have much input on what happens in the draw. But the Broncos seem to have been in Queensland a lot. And I suppose with the extra side, the Dolphins in the comp now too, they don't have to leave there. They do play the Eels in Darwin this weekend. So there's a bit of travel involved in that. But the Broncos are flying high at the top of the competition. after what was a good game in front of I think a record crowd at Seabus Super Stadium on the Gold Coast, 27,000. They filled the stadium after a win they had against the Dragons the week before. The Titans, I think their home fans thought they were a chance, and for a lot of the game they were a chance. It was a cracking game, even though the score ended up big. The Broncos did score 4 tries in the last 15 minutes to make it look like it was an easy game. So the score, no reflection of how good the game was. The Titans actually led at half-time, Smitty, 14-10, and they gave up a try right on the stroke of half-time. So they could have gone in at half-time with a comfortable lead. But the Broncos are a classy side this year. They've got strike. They've got so much attack. And Reece Walsh has been what a find he's been. Not that we thought he couldn't play, but he was a little bit quiet last year when he played for the Warriors. But boy, he's made an impact with the Broncos. So they're going to be, with the draw that they've got, as Ricardo pointed out, they'll be there. They'll be there at the end of the season. They'll be playing finals footy, and if they keep it going, well, they might just finish on top of the competition at the end of the year.
A text has just come in. Rory, his name is. Brandy wanted to know from you, what's up with the Bulldogs' attack? They lost 30-4 to the Eels yesterday to round off round 7. Got injuries, but the halves especially. He says Flanagan not up to it. He puts players in a worse position than he's in himself. So what have you made of the Doggies?
Doggies, again, a club, Ian, that have struggled with injuries. Kickout's not there. I do agree with our texter that I don't think Kyle Flanagan, he's been battling. I don't know whether he is up to it. And I did say about the Dogs a couple of weeks ago, they got in a game that they lost, and I was quite critical of their attack in the game that I was talking about. I can't remember exactly who they were playing, and I said, well, they're leaving it on the shoulders of Matt Burton to try and create. Matt Burton's a runner of the footy. He's not necessarily a ball-playing 5'8", but if you've got a halfback that won't run and you've got a fullback that doesn't pass in Hayes Perham, it limits your attack. Now, Kyle Flanagan is very good at steering a team around the park. He's got a good kicking game, but they really don't need that because Matt Burton's got a great kicking game. Matt Burton, is one of the better kickers in the NRL. So it's a juggling act for the Dogs at the moment. Tavita Pangai returned and looked good in the opening 20 minutes when the Dogs were in the game. Got some offloads, and he will help their attack. But Kickout's out for a long time, and he's, the strike weapon that they bought from the Panthers to make an impact, so he won't be there. And it does leave a lot on the shoulders of the hooker, Reid Marnie, who I think is at times yesterday tried too hard, but you can't blame him for that. He's trying to get something going. Yeah, but I think our man on the text, Smitty, is right. The Dogs' attack is pretty pedestrian, but they need some new heads there.
Greg Alexander, just fantastic for you to make yourself available after your 3 hours on air yourself. So we appreciate your thoughts and review of another great weekend from Warriors fans, and we look forward to the Anzac Day clashes with relish. Cheers, man. Thank you.
Good on you, Smitty. Good to talk, mate.